Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Monday edition of Birds 365 after the Philadelphia Eagles get a big win on Sunday Night Football out in L.A. They win 37-20. It's their seventh straight win, and they moved to 9-2 on the year, and they did it on the back of Saquon Barkley, who had a historic night. Johnny Mack, how you doing on this Monday morning, my man? This Birds team is cooking, John.
Yeah, the goalpost. Do you know Andrew Perloff?
I know the name.
He said, now it's changed, Super Bowl or bust. I'm like, now it's changed. Where have you been? It's always been Super Bowl or bust. But I guess because of the historic nature, as you mentioned, of Saquon Barkley's game, I don't know. It's always been Super Bowl or bust here, to the point that the expectations have been ludicrous until last night, when, you have the Eagles have been around for a while, 92 years. This is the 92nd year. So 9 decades is a big sample size. They've never had a game like that. And that's because there's only been 9 of them in NFL history. So, yeah, that was special. Dominated that defensive front. I thought, I mentioned on the pregame show, I mentioned last week, styles make fights. Eagles, big, physical, bruising offensive line against the Rams. Everybody caught up in the numbers, the statistics. The Rams are pretty good on the front. Yeah, they are. They're also undersized and small and susceptible to getting pushed on by really big, really physical people. And that's what happened last night. And Saquon took advantage. First play in the second half. It's always the second half. First play. Bang, 70 yards. Landon Dickerson gets a 2-for-1. Jordan Mailata, also a big part of that. And then late in the game, when they were desperate, they don't know what they're doing. They got everybody up trying to stop the Philadelphia Eagles because they don't know what to do. And one block, Mekhi Becton, and bang, he's off to the races. It's they haven't had this home run ability ever. So you add that. Jalen Hurts had a great quote. I'll try to pull it up at some point. Basically about adding
momentum. That was a great quote by Jalen Hurts.
Well, he says that all the time, but he was talking about Saquon specifically. The momentum, he's absolutely right. Like, that's made up. I mean, it starts in it. The best example of that is baseball. The old adage in baseball is you're only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. Like, you can have all the momentum of the world, and you got a guy who can't pitch the next day, you're cooked. Momentum's, one of those made up things that can, and Jalen says it all the time. It can start on any play, it can stop on any play. That's up to you specifically. But he had a great quote about Saquon that, if you add issue to a bunch of other issues, you got a problem. And that's what the Eagles have done. That's what Howard Roseman has done. He added an issue to a bunch of other issues. And, the Rams were the first team all year who just, it all clicked against, and they didn't know what to do. Their heads were spinning. They didn't know what to do. Literally, they didn't know what to do. And
John, they just completely out physical that team. I mean, you brought it up. The lines played amazing. Now, the one thing that had me in bed last night after I closed up on the post game show around 3:30. I couldn't stop thinking about Brandon Graham, John. As excited as I was about Saquon. I mean, one, you lose not only do you lose a key piece of the team, but most teams that lose a 36-year-old, it's not that big of a deal. You lose a guy like that.
No, it's
Graham's playing
not.
Unbelievable right now. He's getting a big share of snaps. He's productive. I mean, I think I forget what his stat line was last night. I know he had an incredible sack on third down that looked like he was a 26-year-old on that play, John, that was shot out of a cannon. And now it seems he might be out for the year. That's at least what he said after the game, and I think he's obviously knows his body well enough at this stage to know what happened there. But what do you make of that loss, John? That's a tough one.
Yeah, I guess there's, Nick didn't want to talk about it after the game because obviously, sometimes players think they're hurt really badly and sometimes they're not. That happened to
Yeah.
Britton Covey when he was a rookie. I remember he was telling everybody and then it was a break. But he was back pretty quickly. So you never know, but yeah, I wouldn't count on it. And it's probably going to be a torn triceps. And I happened to write last week, the one position the Eagles can't afford an injury because they already have an injury is edge rusher. And the worst thing that can happen to a team is multiple injuries at the same position. And unfortunately, they now have multiple issues at the same position. And you are down. Remember, I think a lot of people don't understand. There's no more trading. Trade deadline's over. You can pick up somebody off the street. And I'm sure there's some veterans out there that have big names, but they're not playing for a reason. And on the roster, you're down to Nolan Smith being a starter, which I'm not sure you want. Josh Sweat obviously hurt his ankle in the game or something on his right leg, but he came back, so that's good. And then Alex Hunt, and then a couple practice squad players, and that's it. To the point you might have to get inventive. I mentioned it last night on the post-game show. Maybe Milton Williams has to play outside more. He's a versatile player.
Yeah.
Not a traditional edge rusher, but he's a good football player, and maybe that's all you want at this point.
I wonder if they'll play Jordan Davis in more of a 3 technique, or will Jalen Carter potentially rush? I mean, I just don't know what they're going to do. Like when you're down to 2 guys on the edge and Sweat, we talk about Sweat all the time and his drop off last year because of how much he played. I mean, I don't see the rotation out there. As excited as I was about last game, I couldn't help think about that. And I still don't know what they're going to do, John.
No, and a lot of people are. I think Jalen Carter's so effective inside. I don't think they want to mess with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
To say he'll never take an outside rep. He does on occasion now, but it's very rare. I don't think they want to mess with that. Maybe you have to amp up Jordan Davis's work in the 4-man fronts.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Because you have to kick Milton out. Maybe that's the way you go. That I could see, and but it's difficult. And hopefully, the Eagles talked about getting Bryce Huff back late in the season. Hopefully that works out well. That could be a help, but that's down the road a little bit. And again, this is no longer about the NFC East. The NFC East is wrapped up. This is about getting the number 1 seed in the conference, because that's such a big advantage now with only one team that gets the bye. And that's what the Eagles are shooting for.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they're Bird Gang puts it in the chat. Next man up. The problem is, dang.
Yeah, well, the problem is
there's no next man.
Yeah, it's easy to say that, but to assume you're gonna look at the way Brandon played in that game. To assume you're going to get that level of production from the next man up is silly. You've already been through it with, AJ for 3 games this season. Next man up, hopefully you don't have to go through with Saquon. Because Kenny Gainwell's having a good year as a backup, but, he's not Saquon. So you can say next man up all you want. Grant Calcaterra did a nice job stepping up for Dallas Goedert this year. Not the same. Same with Fred Johnson. Nice job. Not the same. And now you have multiple injuries at that particular position. So it's a concern, where you can pretend it isn't, but it is a concern. And Jalen's quote, by the way, on Saquon Barkley, when you accompany an issue with other issues, you become a problem, is the quote, which I thought was a great quote.
That is a good quote. That's a Jalen Hurtsism.
Yeah.
Right? It sounds like a Jalen Hurts quote. Well, he's right too. And I want to speak of this. Speaking of the historic night for Saquon, I do want to talk about it. John, he had 26 carries, for 255 yards on the ground. He had 4 catches for 47 yards receiving, good for 302 total yards, and he had 270-plus yard touchdowns. And now in the last 2 games, John, here's a stat from Adam Schefter this morning. Barkley has 500 scrimmage yards in the last 2 games, joining Hall of Famers Walter Payton and Ollie Matson as the only players in NFL history to record 500 scrimmage yards over a 2-game span. That man is playing special right now, John McMullen.
Yeah, he is. And it's all the second half. It's amazing. I remember talking about the halftime. Like, he was good in the first half of this
Yeah, I think
game.
he had like 13 for 72 in the first half. So
Yeah,
he's doing good,
like,
but nothing.
which is
nothing
really
heavy.
good, but
Yeah.
typically, and that's better than what he has been. He's usually at 4. I know coming into the game, he was at 4.5 yards per carry in the first half and then explodes in the second half. It was almost comical. I mentioned it. 13 for 73. So really good first half. Don't get me wrong. It was evident. First offensive play of the third quarter, bang, 70 yards. Yeah, I mean, and I'm glad, by the way, Nick brought this up, and I'm glad he did, because everybody, and Saquon, as you mentioned, deserves all his flowers, and he might be the MVP. That's where Dan Silly and I disagree. When you have a season like this, MVP is about stats, and he's, as you just mentioned, he's doing things that haven't been done for a long time.
Yeah.
So that gets noticed and stuff like that. But the Eagles' goal is the Super Bowl. I think everybody realizes that. Everybody knows that. And boy, I can't say enough about this offensive line. I just can't. They're always, somehow Jason Kelsey was able to overcome the relative and that anonymousness of what the offensive line usually goes through. He's become a legitimate celebrity, maybe the first one ever. But this offensive line is just unbelievable. So what Nick said, what everyone's going to look at today and talk about is Saquon's 255 yards. But that offensive line is where it started. And then it's the same thing on defense with the defensive line. That's what we talked about. They dominated up front on both sides of the football. That's why they won that football game. But Saquon deserves all his flowers. He's right now, today, if they took that vote, whatever it is, November 25th, he's the MVP of the NFL.
I think he's right there too.
But that offensive line is the key to it all. The key to it all. And I hope people realize, because I always say, I'm trying to elevate the conversation on this show. I'm not trying to, look at the shiny bauble. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal. But this offensive line is consistently great. And it has been for a long time with Jeff Stoutland running the show.
There's no doubt they are the reason that Barkley is running wild. But John, you got to give credit to him too, because holy shit, man, can he hit a hole? Have we ever had a running back this good or this impactful, John? I mean, look, we've had a good offensive line.
No, they've never had the home run threat of this, because what he does, they've always been able. Like I say, he gets 70 and 72-yard touchdowns. That might be a 40. The second one might be a 40-yard run for an average, not average.
I don't even know about that. He bounced outside on that run. He juked right around that second level, man. He was he is explosive.
Most running back, again, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, these are massive holes. Like
I know, but come on, John. We've had good running backs here in Philly, but we've never seen a running back explode like this.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, Miles might go 45 yards with that. He takes it to the house. DeAndre might go 35, 40 yards. He takes it to the house. That's the difference. And that's a big difference. remember when he was a little bit banged up or whatever, Kenny goes 13 yards right up the middle for a touchdown. I mean, that's like, I mean, these guys are, and the week before, same thing, where he had the 3 runs, where it was like 14, 15 yards. These guys, again, on the 70-yard touchdown, watch Landon Dickerson's block when you get a chance. Watch it. He got a 2-for-1. He Kelsey'd it. And Jordan Mailata also was a big part of that as well. On the second block, it was Mekhi Becton. These guys are unbelievable. Unbelievable. The week before, it was Cam Jurgens getting the 2-for-1. You remember that block? These guys are special. And so is Saquon. But I hope people realize it's both parts of the equation.
Yeah, it's a deadly combination. You put Saquon Barkley at his skill set, he's drinking from the fountain of youth too. He's running 21 miles an hour on these touchdowns.
And he's probably motivated to show the Giants they were wrong, and all that kind of stuff factors into it. He's happier, he's winning games. All that human nature factors into it. Right now, he's the MVP of the NFL, but the most important part of the Philadelphia Eagles remains that offensive line.
Yeah, he's up over 1,600 yards from scrimmage, John, in 11 games.
1,650 is where I had him.
1,650 is where you had him.
He's only got 6 games to beat it.
Yeah, well, I think it's safe to say he's going to beat it, and he get to 2,000? I think he will. And we'll be giving away a couple more jerseys. It is a jersey giveaway. So for those who are joining, I think we got a new member this morning. Pile Driver Outdoors. I like that. Big fish in the pick. Thanks for becoming a member, brother. Appreciate that. So we will be giving away a Saquon Barkley jersey on tomorrow's edition of Birds 365. I always do it on Tuesdays after the Sunday game. So we will be giving away the jersey tomorrow. A massive night for Saquon Barkley. John, I do want to ask also, we mentioned Brandon Graham already. We mentioned the defense a little bit. I want to mention something about Jalen Hurts, and I saw this last night, and in a way, I think it encapsulated how I've felt about Jalen Hurts in the last couple of weeks, and I'll read it off to you exactly as I saw it. And this is from a guy on Twitter. I don't know who it is. I think it might have just went viral, and I saw it. But Jalen Hurts, his performance, he tweets out, aside from Barkley, Jalen learning how to be a game manager is the best thing to happen to this offense, and I don't mean that as a slight either. And I think it's a good point, John, because we talk about all the time how much of a playmaker Jalen Hurts is and how much he's been that his entire career. When a play breaks down, he scrambles, he does things. I think he's really learning how sometimes you can sit back in this offense and let Saquon go or let AJ go or let the offensive line work. And I think he's learned how to do that in a big way. Really efficient night for him last night. I think he was 15 of 22. 15 to 22 for 179. He's playing really efficient football right now, QB1, John. What'd you think of Jalen Hurts last night?
Yeah, I mean, again, the first half, I think there's stuff to clean up, but the ability to make something out of nothing and break sort of the backs of the defense when you think, all right, we got this, and then they lose contain, and he's running for a first down, and then it's woe was me, and they start, putting their heads down a little bit. That's what he's doing most effectively. I'm not one, which I used to have that argument with Jody all the time. Game manager to me is not an insult. I don't consider him a game manager.
No, I don't think overall he is, but don't you think he's learned kind of how to be that at times? And it's hard for him.
No, I kind of disagree from the traditional, and again, it depends on everybody's definition, but from the traditional way people describe a game manager, like Brock Purdy that's where Jody would get mad at me. I'd say he's a game manager. And that's what he is. He's a point guard. And that's what a lot of traditional quarterbacks were back in the day. That was the whole design of the position. He doesn't play it like that. Not even close. I mean, that's one of my biggest problems. And still, part of it is you don't know who to blame. They're still running these long developing routes. There's nothing quick. When they did do something to AJ Brown, it worked as it usually does. But I don't see that consistently. What he does and what he's thinking about it, I don't think it's managing the game. It's, the Rams, ironically, because their whole offense is built on testing the discipline of the opposing defense. Their defense was incredibly undisciplined all night, and they couldn't keep him in the pocket. He'd escape the pocket and get an easy first down, running the football. That to me is not game managing. That's just taking advantage of a undisciplined defense. The game managing stuff, to me, again, my definition is, all right, it's 3rd and 5. Run the slant, get the football out of your hands quickly, move the chains. That to me is more of the point guard traditional game managing.
Yeah, I do think from Jalen Hurts' style of play, though, normally he's such that playmaker. I think he's done a nice job this year. Obviously, in the last 7 games on this win streak, his attempts through the air have come down drastically. He's not throwing the ball 30, 40 times a game. He's way down. And I think it's okay. I think it works right now. And this Eagles team is out-physicaling people, John. I mean, can they out-physical their way to a Super Bowl? I think they might be able to, dude. No team seems to be able to hang with this Eagles.
Well, we're going to learn. We're going to learn a lot.
Quarters.
We're going to learn a lot this week because Baltimore's a physical team, and they are. It's not bullshit. They're not. I'm not going to walk in here on Monday if the Eagles beat them up and say they're not physical, because they're physical. Down the road, unless somebody knocks them off before the Eagles get to them, Detroit's really physical. So there's going to be people. Right now they're Mike Tyson in his prime against, bunch of tomato cans. It's going to be Mike Tyson against Evander Holyfield at some point. And are they going to be biting off ears, or are they going to be able to stand toe to toe? It's easy to beat on the weakest kid in high school. But if the other bully stands up to the bully, that's when you learn.
Yeah. Well,
but I'll say this. The Eagles are a bully, man. They're a bully. And there's only a matter if another bully can step up and deal with them.
And we'll see if that bully is as big and bad as our bully. I think the Eagles have that in the bag. We will get to a commercial break, and we'll get to Jeff Kerr. I do want to read a couple super chats, John, before we do that. By the way, Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway, so get your memberships in now. Appreciate everybody for being here. And Martine checks in. Good morning, Z and John. Question about the corner rotation. When Slay goes down, Rodgers comes in. I thought Ringo was the better fit last night, given how physical Kupp and Puka are. How come no Ringo over Rodgers? John, what's your response to that?
Because Ringo has been too handsy, gets called for a bunch of penalties, and they're more comfortable with Rodgers. So until he proves he can play. Great special teams player, by the way. Great gunner.
Yeah, and the way the refs were calling PI last night.
Yeah, that's not a Kaylee Ringo game.
Yeah.
Too handsy. And Rodgers has played well in the times past. He didn't play great last night, but he's played well when he's got an opportunity to take some snaps because of Slay getting banged up. So there was no reason to look at Ringo at this point. But why he's ahead of him is because Ringo was too handsy and he was, susceptible to get too many penalties.
Yeah, I thought that pass interference call on Isaiah Rodgers got in his head a little bit. You could almost visibly see it on his face that he was pissed off.
That was a bad call. Yeah,
it was a terrible call, and I think he knew that. And then he knew how much it cost the team. And then the very next play got burned for the touchdown. And then the next drive, they came right back at him. I think it was a 4th and 3, and they went right at Puka Nacua for 31 yards on 4th and 3.
Yeah, Puka's tough to deal with. Puka, it's bad when a wide receiver is your most physical player, but that's what the Rams are. Puka
Nacua. Did you see the one play that I think it was the play that Zach Bond broke up the pass to Puka Nacua?
Yeah.
He tried to come up through the I don't know what gap that was. It was more toward the right side of the offensive line towards his right tackle, but he tried to come up through the middle of the offensive line on that play on fourth
Oh,
down.
I didn't see the release. I
Oh
didn't.
yeah, you got to
I'll have to
watch. He
really
got he
check
got jammed
'cause
up
he
in there.
does that.
It didn't work so easy.
Well, yeah, I mentioned that. I said if he does that, the Eagles better be ready for it.
Yeah, well they were.
Um, yeah, I didn't see the release. I'll have to recheck that. But he's a
Yeah, I
really
believe it was on the play that Zach Bond batted it away. It was a slant.
that makes sense
It was
because
a mesh route right across the middle.
typically he's going to get that. So he's a really good player.
Yeah, he's excellent player, no doubt
Yeah.
about it. I think he's, like I said last night, he's highly rated. I think he's still a little underrated in this league. He's an excellent receiver. Brian Garner checks in. Heard you guys last night. AJ is more important because he makes defenses play honest. The only time teams sell out to stop Barkley is in the 4-minute drill. I feel bad for BG. Vic has to work some magic. Brian, thank you for the super chat, my man. Point well taken there on AJ and Saquon. John, your response to Brian.
Well, they're both important. I just, we got caught up in that. Look, the guy is the MVP, and we're going to bring on Jeff Kerr. And thanks for getting up early, but yeah, the guy's the MVP of the NFL right now. But if you're asking me, you've seen the Eagles' offense without AJ Brown. AJ Brown's the best pure football player on the Eagles. That doesn't change. Saquon would admit that. Everybody admits that.
I think it changes on a year-to-year basis. I think it's Saquon this
Well,
year.
of course it changes. It's fluid. But I'm saying because guys get old, guys don't stay at their current standard. He's at his current standard. My definition, again, everything's about definition. Who performs their job the best? Because always, if you're talking about impact, the most impactful player on the Eagles is Jalen Hurts for obvious reasons. Every quarterback in every NFL city, whether they're Patrick Mahomes down to whoever you think the word Tommy DeVito would be the worst. That's a fucking joke that he plays, but they're the most important player on that team. Every single one. So it depends on your Saquon's having the best season. Who's the best pure football player on the Philadelphia Eagles? It's AJ Brown.
Good stuff there. Let's keep rolling real quick. 2 more super chats, and we'll get to Jeff Kerr. James Carver checks in. James, good to see you, brother. Thank you. For the man, no myth, only legend, BG. Now praying that it's God enables him to play for a 16th year and or he returns in the Super Bowl. Wow, that would be a crazy story. Brace and all. We'll see what ends up happening there. James Carver. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And BG is, without a doubt, a legend, especially here in Philly. Philly Don says, morning, guys. They can still use Bond off the edge and play Trotter at middle linebacker.
Come on, guys. Stop. Zach Bond's been one of the best off-ball linebackers in the NFL. Him. You're not moving Zach Bond. He's not. Here we go.
Well, I think people are wondering what
he might rush a little bit more. I mean, the guy is playing at an all-pro level. And you think because he's playing at an all-pro level, by the way, they lucked half-ass into that. And he's playing at an all-pro level and you want to move him? No. You got to figure it out. It's got to be Jalix Hunt. It's got to be Josh Sweat playing more, unfortunately. Maybe you move Milton Williams more outside. You got to figure it out. Zach Bond's an all-pro off-ball linebacker at this stage of the season. You don't move him. My God, this team hasn't had a good linebacker playing 92 years. I'm exaggerating.
Point understood. I'll get to a couple more super chats after the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Kerr, joining us in just a second here. Let me tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Before I get Jeff Kerr up, you see the promo code on your screen. Everybody use it. It's YouTube150. It gives you 150% sign-up bonus on that very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit. So go now to betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. And use that promo code YouTube150 and get your Saquon Barkley prop bets in because, man, they seem to be hitting every single week. Good stuff from BetUS. Let's go to Jeff Kerr joining us now here on Birds 365. Jeff, welcome to the show, man.